HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Lagoon, Encounters with the Whales of San Ignacio, by James Michael Dorsey. Read by Rowat. 1. Breaches. An immense gray back parted the water, rising like an island being born, while the mist from the whale's blow coated us like dew. She logged on top, then turned toward our panga, taking our measure. My fists were clenched in anticipation. This was a massive wild animal, an adult Pacific gray whale, a devilfish in its natural domain. Our only defense against such a giant was blind faith. I thought of the old stories, and it came to me that one of my own ancestors might have plunged a harpoon into one of hers. I looked back at Maldo, hand on the tiller like the old sea dog he was. He was smiling, whispering to the whale in a voice meant only for her, using his magic to bring her to us. This was not fear, but love. The great back began to move in our direction, leaving a spreading wake on the surface. A century and a half before our arrival, the waters of San Ignacio Lagoon in Baja, Mexico, ran red. The lagoon was a killing ground ruled by those who sought to gain riches from whale oil. Today, along with Scammon's Lagoon, it is part of the Vizcaíno Biosphere Reserve UNESCO World Heritage Site and the largest undeveloped wildlife sanctuary in the Americas. Along with Magdalena Bay, these three great nursery lagoons of central Baja are the only places on Earth where wild animals in their natural habitat routinely seek human contact. San Ignacio's existence has never been without threat. In the lagoon, the old world collides with the new and is balanced on a fragile edge. In the past, the danger was only men with harpoons, while today it is men in business suits, a changing environment, people who love whales too much, and even other whales. The whale sounded, sliding gradually beneath the surface, where her gray and white camouflage could be tracked. Her flukes passed below us, revealing a missing piece the size of a white shark bite. Her tail was twice as wide as I am tall, but its movement was barely perceptible. Then the waters parted, and her massive head was next to us as she slowly rolled from side to side, giving us a thorough look. She was as long as two of our boats, and outweighed us by close to 40 tons. Her white, barnacle-encrusted rostrum betrayed her age as perhaps close to 70, a fairly long lifespan for a creature so pursued by predators. She bore a lifetime of scars, most from shark attacks, and half a dozen prop strikes that she would not have felt because of her 8-inch armor of blubber. She hugged the boat like an old friend, diving below to rub her back on our keel as she rocked us back and forth, and when she came up, I looked deep into her blowhole, feeling her inner heat. Living history was within my reach, an ancient and intelligent creature, unchanged in millennia, whose social order was beyond my understanding. Her ancestors roamed both land and sea for countless centuries before my own tribe arrived on the earth. What stories she could tell! I found myself talking to her, and realized I'd never done so with an animal other than a dog. She rolled on her side, and I caught my reflection in her iris, black, within a deep brown eye the size of my fist, and luminescent, with eyelashes any model would kill for. She did not blink, but held my gaze as I imagined her thoughts, willing me to understand. It was not the vacant look of a cow or pig that required no presence, but an intelligent look, inquiring about the strange creature in her domain. I pressed my hand against her flank, finding it smooth and pliable like firm rubber, while she returned the pressure, pushing against me. She came to each of us in turn, her mouth barely open, revealing aging, yellowed baleen, then submerged beneath. As she turned upside down below us, the panga began to turn in a slow circle. She was balancing us on her stomach, holding us in place with her pectoral flippers, and Maldo laughed as she played with us like a giant bathtub toy. When she had had enough, she disappeared as easily as her blow in a breeze, a thermal upon the water. How long she stayed I cannot recall, but it was not long enough. As Maldo started the engine, Irene's and my tears of joy merged with the sea spray. I looked back once to see her spy hop, raise her head out of the water and rotate to look around, her massive head watching as we disappeared, wondering if she was calling us back or simply displaying her majesty as a queen of the lagoon. Motoring back to camp, I barely noticed the osprey passing overhead with a halibut in its talons, nor did I pay attention to the sea lion porpoising off our port side. Nature was alive and active all around us, but this one creature had captured me. I was lost in the moment, with no way of knowing it would be repeated countless times over the coming years. This was not the devilfish whose stories I had grown up with. One of the largest creatures on Earth had just gone nose to nose with one of the most fragile, and both of us came away with lighter souls. In February 1972, 24 years before my first contact with a gray whale, a Mexican fisherman named José Francisco Pachico Mayoral was fishing for grouper with his partner, Santos Perez, in a 20-foot panga in San Ignacio Lagoon. A panga, driven by a pangero, is like a Boston whaler. It is an open, fiberglass, round-bottom boat, the workhorse of Baja, and a very seaworthy craft. In Baja, the panga is the work transport du jour. The fishermen of the lagoon were used to the whales, but kept their distance, because they still feared them as lethal devilfish. Pachico loved to tell his story, and I had the pleasure of hearing it directly from him. A large female approached his boat and began to rub on its keel. Pachico and Santos, fearing the worst, hunkered down on the floor of the panga. When the whale would not leave, Pachico cautiously peered over the side of the boat to find himself looking directly into the eye of an adult gray, jet black, with a brown iris and lashes as long as an elephant's. Gathering his courage, he reached over the side and touched the creature. The skin was slick and smooth. When the whale pressed against his hand, he jumped, startled by the animal's reaction to his presence. Pachico talked Santos into also touching the whale, but his hand was shaking so badly from fear that he never made contact. They both claimed the whale was heavily scarred from prop strikes, and in future seasons this allowed them to recognize the same whale many times. That day, the whale stayed with them for a half hour. Try to imagine that feeling. An animal you have feared your entire life is suddenly caressing your hand. That night, Pachico related the story to a skeptical wife and friends who thought him mad from the sun, but over the next few days other fishermen ventured out and began to touch the devilfish, and all reported the same result. This was world-shaking news for people who had shared the water for decades with an animal they feared. Had they always been friendly? Did we only need to reach out and touch them? Soon, wives, children, and friends were petting the devilfish. As they came to recognize individual whales, they began to assign them names. Something ethereal was taking form. Reader's Digest published Pachico's story, and in this version he was curled up on the floor of the panga, making the sign of the cross and asking the Blessed Virgin to spare his life. Later, Pachico would be featured in an IMAX film and mentioned honorably in Dick Russell's definitive book, Eye of the Whale. I met Pachico years ago in front of his house, the porch overgrown with plants, and the house itself a construction of whatever flotsam the lagoon had given up. He wore a faded flannel shirt and a sun-bleached baseball hat, and I felt myself in the presence of a rock star. He could have been the poster boy for Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea, with his weathered, leathery face a road map of tough times. Everyone who went to the lagoon wanted to meet Pachico, and he wore his celebrity with dignity. On a small sand dune across from the house, the aging panga from which he made first contact still sat, a victim of a half-century of relentless sun. He spoke of the whale as part of his family. Many who knew him believed he possessed a special gift that drew the whales to him. One fisherman told me Pachico was a brujo, which normally would translate to male witch, but in Pachico's case meant something closer to whale whisperer. Once Pachico told me he often wondered if that first whale was an aberration, or if perhaps it told other whales it was safe to approach people. I doubt that either case was true. Just like dogs who return with wagging tails to their masters who kick them, I believe gray whales, once hunted to the brink of extinction, were always friendly. Humans just never gave them the chance to show it. That first touch was soon almost as famous as God reaching out to Adam on the Sistine Chapel ceiling, as its effect rippled throughout the world. Posters and postcards proliferated, illustrating the touch as it came to be known, and parallels were drawn between it and the famous baseball catch by Willie Mays. Pachico passed away a few years back, but today members of his family still own and operate Pachico's whale-watching tours in the lagoon, proud to share their father's story with clients. The same year as the touch, the Mexican government created a reserve and refuge area for migratory birds and wildlife in San Ignacio Lagoon. The United Nations called for a ban on worldwide commercial whaling. The U.S. Congress instituted the Marine Mammal Protection Act. And the following year, the U.S. Congress passed the Endangered Species Act, which included the gray whale. And it all started with an interspecies touch. Pachico's legacy was thrust upon him. Almost overnight he went from a humble fisherman to a symbol recognized the world over as the godfather of whale watching. Today, all pangeros in the lagoon are graduates of a rigorous, government-run naturalist training course, so they can take people on the water to meet and learn about the descendants of Pachico's whale. Pachico never told me if he thought that whale had chosen him or if he thought it was a random occurrence. If the whale had approached a different panga, would the world still fear them today as devilfish? Why did that one particular whale rub against his boat? Was it cognizant enough to know that its actions could forever change how humankind viewed its species? I choose to believe that whale was, in its own way, something of an ambassador, sent to tell both humans and whales that the killing times were over, and it was time to start anew. Sometimes it seems the tiniest occurrence, even unrecognized at the moment, often defines our futures. After 2+ decades, I think of Pachico every time I touch a whale, and have to believe he is smiling. In the mid-19th century, a whaling captain named Charles Scammon, 1825 to 1911, was sailing out of San Francisco, California, but not as a long-range whaler like those out of New England who were gone for years on end in pursuit of humpback and deep-water sperm whales. He concentrated on hunting the shore-hugging gray whale that swam directly past his home base on their migration. His logs show that in 1855 he was taking whales in Magdalena Bay, Baja, while in 1857 he was whaling in Ojo de Liebre, a lagoon that would later bear his name. He first entered San Ignacio Lagoon in late 1859 after his whale-hunting brother-in-law, Jared Poole, found it and told him it contained impossible numbers of whales. According to Poole, the lagoon was like a giant fish pond. Accounts written at the time said you could walk across the lagoon on the backs of whales. It did not take long for the slaughter to begin. Whale calves did not have enough blubber to make them commercially viable as prey, but the whalers would harpoon them first, knowing the cries of distress would bring the mother close enough for a kill. Yet nothing prepared them for the wrath of angry 40-ton mothers. A gray whale's only defense is its tail, and a mother whale will wield it like a hammer and defend her threatened calf with the fury of a harpy. A large gray whale can knock an orca senseless with its tail flukes, and it was more than able to splinter the old-time, rickety whaling dories that were killing the newborns. For years the lagoon ran red with blood as tens of thousands of whales were slaughtered, and no one knows for sure how many whalers died by the flukes of an enraged mother during that time. When the clashes between humans and beasts were exaggerated to sell newspapers, nothing was mentioned about mothers defending their innocent newborns. The gray whale simply became known around the world as a devilfish, a name that lasted until a half-century ago. What a human trait to demonize an animal simply for defending its young from slaughter. Ironically, in his later years, Scammon had an epiphany, and to recant for his sins, he not only retired from whaling, but became a leading advocate for the conservation of whales. In 1874, he wrote the book Marine Mammals of the Northwest Coast of North America. It was a financial failure, but over time it became a definitive non-fiction classic about whales that was only eclipsed in 2001 when environmental writer Dick Russell issued Eye of the Whale. Today, not entirely accurately, San Ignacio's neighboring lagoon of Ojo de Liebre is more commonly known as Scammon's Lagoon, for the man who once stained its waters red with blood. Archaeological evidence tells us the whales Pacheco and I had touched, and the whales that Scammon slaughtered, were descendants of those who shared this land and sea with the indigenous people, the Cochimí, who resided in central Baja, near San Ignacio, as early as 10,000 years ago. They are one of 8 distinct tribal groups that occupied prehistoric Baja, and they were spread across the largest territory. The Cochimí were first encountered by Spanish explorers in the 17th century, and they initially hid from the strange-looking invaders. At that time, it is estimated that there were some 60,000 indigenous peoples living throughout Baja. By 1762, that number had fallen to 20,000, and by 1800, less than 6,000 indigenous peoples were still alive, thanks to the European introductions of measles, smallpox, and typhus, the eternal story of first white contact. The Cochimí were hunter-gatherers who settled the coast to hunt and fish, but for religion and/or ceremony they retreated to the closest mountains, the San Franciscos, where they painted and carved their history on monolithic walls, some of their renderings being carbon-dated to more than 9,000 years old. There are almost 4,000 painted cave sites in Baja, all believed to be painted by the Cochimí. Their creations carry great significance today. They left behind images of sea creatures in 5 separate caves, including fish. One halibut in particular is rendered quite accurately. There are turtles and bat rays, painted beautifully in local ochre. There's even one painting of what appears to be a very pregnant sea lion. Most important, there are multiple images of whales. Judging from the image's shape, lack of a dorsal fin, and small pectoral flippers, they are depictions of gray whales. One whale floats in space above other creatures of the land, while another is painted facing up, as if spy-hopping on its tail. Yet another whale painted in red ochre is superimposed on a second in black, while a third hangs in the air with its pectoral fins drooping. The largest rendering appears to be a breaching whale. Whatever their creators intended them to be, they remain the first physical proof of the connection of the indigenous peoples of San Ignacio to whales. So what do these paintings mean? Other caves in the area depict traditional hunting scenes with people using bows and arrows, some showing antelope and deer being impaled by arrows, and others with animistic people raising their hands in supplication. And those are what one would normally expect to find in such remote areas. There's a cave with 20-foot-tall people that has famously become known as the Family of Man, but only the local caves had renderings of whales. The closest cave containing a painting of a whale is 25 miles from the ocean. The terrain leading to this cave is brutal, filled with multiple species of thorny cactus, rattlesnakes, cougars, and wolves. The ascent offers only treacherous footing of loose shale and fragile sandstone. Such a journey for early people could be life-threatening. There had to be a deep meaning for them to have created these images so far away from their source. The Kochi-Mi were not known to be seafarers other than close to shore in dugout canoes. They could easily have seen turtles, rays, and fish from shore or from a canoe, but what about the whales? Had they hunted and killed a whale? Had they encountered a dead whale washed up on shore? To depict them with such accuracy meant they had to have seen the entire creature. It is unlikely that they got into the water with such a giant animal, so this suggests they found dead whales on shore. It would have been the largest animal they had seen, so what did it mean to them? Was it a spirit being? Animists such as the Kochi-Mi could easily have ascribed deital powers to such a creature. Perhaps transferring their images to the cave walls was their means of taking the power from the animal for themselves. The painting's true purpose will never be known, but gray whales have held magical sway over the local people of central Baja for multiple centuries. Despite their remote location, these painted caves are more popular with visitors than ever. Today they are overseen by Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History and are guarded and protected. In 1993, they were granted World Heritage Site status by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. To some of us, they are altars and a link to the ancestors of those I have come to see. I choose to believe they were painted to keep them alive, just as the descendants of the Kochi-Mi protect the whales today. 2. Bienvenido a San Ignacio. While San Ignacio revealed the gray whale to us, it was an orca in British Columbia that first led us to it. We heard the whale blow before we saw it. The sound skimmed the water like a stone. Its black dorsal sliced the surface, leaving a rippling V in its wake. We held hands to tighten our kayak raft, finding safety in numbers and making us appear larger to a potential predator, hoping to get a look as it passed by. "It has to pass us," I repeated to myself silently. Adrenaline pulsed through my heart like a drum, and I gripped my paddle with white knuckles. In a kayak, half of your body is underwater, so we were floating at eye level with the mightiest predator on Earth. My wife Irene and I were paddling the Johnstone Strait in British Columbia, part of the Inside Passage, a kayaker's mecca and a summer freeway for spawning salmon and the resident orcas who prey on them. We never gave serious thought to actually encountering a whale, especially one with killer in its name, but one was coming toward us, and fast. We watched its majestic black dorsal rise and fall, ever closer with each rising, its blows loudly powerful, like a steam engine coughing. It made one final dive, and then the world exploded. The great black head broke the surface in a mighty lunge not more than 10 feet from our boat. There was a flash of pink tongue and huge white teeth, its 6-foot dorsal towering above like a gleaming saber, a beast so large it seemed to blot out the sky. In that moment, I knew I was going to die. We braced for collision as the whale sounded, rolling at the last moment so its dorsal cleared our keel by inches, and it glided silently by, directly below us, close enough to touch. And during that blink of eternity, 2 vastly different worlds merged. In that moment, dazed and unmoving, my mind raced with 1,000 questions. It was the kind of moment I travel for, and on the rare occasions they present themselves, they end far too quickly. In the chaos of the moment, I had forgotten that it was our 25th wedding anniversary. Now I have told 2 different personal stories about 2 different whales in 2 separate locations, so an explanation is in order. That special wedding anniversary began this story, and it called for a special celebration. We decided to repeat our wedding vows in the venerable Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. Those were the dark, pre-internet days, so arrangements were made through letters and long-distance phone calls. In the back-and-forth deluge of red tape and finances required to fuel such an event, I lost my cool, called a religious bishop an obscene name, and was fired as a potential wedding client by the vicar of Paris. How many people can say they were fired from their own second wedding? The big day marched closer as we searched for a special Plan B, when an unsolicited ad appeared in our mailbox. It was a glossy photo of a man in a kayak, serenely gliding through a pod of orcas. It beckoned us to visit British Columbia and bask in nature's glory from a kayak, the ubiquitous modern transport of the Northwest coast. The ad was so photoshopped, even the whales were smiling. But it got my attention. A quarter-century of marriage celebrated on the ocean in a kayak would be unlike anything we had done, and for that it held an odd appeal. The fact that we did not know how to kayak was not an issue, and our complete ignorance of whales mattered even less. It would be an adventure, a learn-as-you-go trip, a true exploration. All I had to do was sell the idea to Irene. She had always been incredibly open-minded, and in fact has traveled the world with me, often in less than comfortable conditions. But entering the ocean wild in a tiny, self-propelled, mostly plastic vessel not much larger than some fish was not high on her anniversary celebration list. Neither was camping in a northwestern rainforest, especially after losing Paris. More important, I had to gently suggest that flesh-eating, 9-ton whales would also be a possibility. Needless to say, my celebratory choice won out. We would trade Parisian sheets for sleeping bags in the Canadian forest. 26 years ago, we were set on a path that would have us kayaking and sailing for the next 3 decades from the southern tip of Baja to Alaskan waters and multiple points along the eastern rim of fire, always to find and learn about whales. It is a path that meandered often, but always led us back to Baja and the lagoon. The name California has its own fascinating story. The one most commonly accepted comes from a 16th-century adventure novel titled Las Sergas de Esplandian by Garcia Rodriguez de Montalvo. It tells the story of an all-black woman's army that tolerated no males other than for procreation and then eliminated them. It states that they were led by a queen named Khalifa, and they were from an island known as Califor. The novel spoke of gold, possibly prompting later Spanish exploration looking for the fictional city of Cibola, which legend said was built entirely of gold. Whatever the origin, Baja California means Lower California. Modern Baja has 2 states, Baja Alta and Baja Sur, Upper and Lower. We are going to travel through Alta into Sur. It was during these early explorations that the first written references to whales on the Baja coast came to us in the journals of Spanish explorer Hernán Cortés. They are the earliest known references to whales blowing since the Icelandic sagas, heroic prose narratives written around 1200. The first known European to set foot in Baja was a Basque sailor by the name of Fortun Jiménez Bertandona, who, under the command of Hernán Cortés, came in search of the gold of legend. Bertandona led a revolt against his commander, and he and his mutineers landed near modern-day La Paz at the southern tip of Baja, thinking they had found the island of Califor. Bertandona was killed by local natives, and his crew returned to New Spain with a fictional story about black pearls, but no gold. It was the lust for gold that lured numerous succeeding explorers to set sail for Santa Cruz, the name given to the land by Cortés. From 1535 through 1539, Spanish expeditions in Baja encountered hostile native peoples, especially the Pericu, whose home was the southern end of the peninsula. And while the Spanish continued to explore the coast, they decided the interior was not worth the effort and relegated it to their missionaries to bring the native peoples into line with their rule. Baja is a peninsula that resembles an elongated dogleg. It is 770 miles long, 1,250 kilometers, 25 miles wide, 40 kilometers, at its narrowest, and 143 miles wide, 230 kilometers, at its widest. This long, narrow finger of rock is home to 22 volcanoes, making it one of the most seismically active areas on Earth. The land as we know it today was born some 6 million years ago when nature got angry enough to toss the Pacific and North American tectonic plates about, ripping a gouge in the earth like massive scissors opening and allowing the ocean to rush in. It divided today's modern Mexico in two, and Baja resides on the Pacific.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?